Somewhere deep within, there exists a being, not broken, not searching, not doubting, not reacting. A being who walks through life like a mountain rooted in silence, like a river flowing without losing itself in the whirlpools of fear. A being whose presence is so whole, so luminous, that even the darkest forces bow before its unshakable stillness. But most people, though born with the seed of this limitless being, have fallen into hidden black holes of the mind. Invisible traps, false identities, beliefs so old and deeply woven into their consciousness that they mistake them for truth itself. Instead of standing as the architect of reality, they drift like lost ships on a stormy sea, caught in currents of fear, craving, anger, and doubt. Neville Goddard, a mystic who understood the secret architecture of reality, once said, "Man's chief delusion is his conviction that there are causes other than his own state of consciousness." This is the hidden foundation you must understand before all else. Nothing in your life exists apart from your consciousness. Everything you experience, every victory, every pain, every pattern, is the outward reflection of the inward perception your consciousness holds of itself. This perception has a name, identity. But here lies the deeper truth, the wound beneath all wounds. Many of the perceptions you live by are not your true self. They are false self-images, programs, illusions, masks, fears, layered over your real being. These illusions act like veils, distorting the infinite creative power of your consciousness. They shrink what is vast, they chain what is free, they darken what is pure. Among the countless false selves, there are 8 great distortions that act like black holes, bleeding your power, leaking your energy, and bending your reality into suffering. If you see them clearly, if you shift them, if you reroot your identity in the living truth of your being, your entire reality will transform. The path begins with awareness, and awareness begins by seeing what you have unknowingly become. So in this journey, we will expose the 8 false identities that quietly govern your life, and then, one by one, replace them with the radiant truth of who you really are. The people pleaser is the first shadow self, a false identity born when one forgets where real power and joy come from. At the root of this illusion is a reversal of divine order. Instead of understanding that joy creates relationships, the people pleaser believes that relationships create joy. He gives his inner power to others, hoping that their approval will reflect back enough light to make him feel whole. But this inversion is a lie taught subtly through years of unconscious programming. From childhood classrooms to cultural norms, we were trained to equate external harmony with internal safety. Be nice, get along, make them happy. What began as a structure for social cooperation hardened into a belief system about self-worth. Over time, this belief mutates into a consciousness that says, if people are pleased with me, I am good. If they are not, something is wrong with me. This is not kindness, it is bondage. And so, what once served as social courtesy transforms into a self-betraying compulsion. The one who lives under this spell begins making decisions he knows are not aligned. He silences his instincts. He ignores his boundaries. And worse, he becomes a co-creator of realities he doesn't believe in. Every time he chooses false harmony over truth, he bleeds personal power into illusion. The universe, being mental and vibrational, responds not to politeness, but to authentic inner vibration. When a person returns to the truth of who they are, they realize all power comes from within, not through pleasing others, but through knowing and expanding from inner truth. This is when the self-commander begins to rise, calm, grounded, and free. The self-commander lives from the knowing that reality does not begin outside. It is born within. His feelings are not reactions to others' approval, but emanations from his own conscious alignment. He understands that the world does not shape him. He shapes the world through the quality of his awareness. Where the people-pleaser waits for others to confirm his worth, the self-commander affirms, "My inner state shapes my world. The kingdom is within me." He doesn't reject people. He simply no longer abandons himself. He respects others, but he no longer seeks permission to exist. He leads from inner authority, not social fear. This is not arrogance. This is integrity. The self-commander lives not in the reality others want to build for him, but in the reality his soul knows is true. He walks in quiet power, aligned with the force that shapes universes, the silent authority of consciousness aware of itself. And once this alignment is restored, life begins to respond, not to masks, not to roles, but to the real. The overthinker is not a problem solver. He is a prisoner of imagined outcomes. At first glance, it looks like clarity he's seeking, but beneath the spinning thoughts is not a search for truth. It's a desperate attempt to control the unknown by exhausting every possible scenario. What he really fears is not a wrong decision, but being responsible for what happens next. This false self arises when consciousness forgets where true certainty comes from. Instead of remembering that stillness and clarity are born from within, the overthinker looks outside, to logic, to others' opinions, to 1,000 mental simulations, hoping that one of them will finally give him permission to act. But the mind was never built to predict every possibility. It was built to serve what the heart has already known. The overthinker becomes trapped in loops, always one more thought away from resolution. He delays, he doubts, he dissects, and yet nothing moves. Decisions feel heavy because they are no longer expressions of alignment. They've become efforts to avoid regret. And the more he tries to think his way to peace, the further peace slips away. This is how energy leaks, not through action, but through inaction wrapped in endless analysis. And just like stagnant water begins to rot, so too does the mind begin to decay when it circles without grounding. But beneath the noise, there is a deeper identity. A self that does not spin, but knows. A consciousness that does not need certainty from the outside, because it already lives in alignment with inner clarity. This is the decisive thinker. The decisive thinker doesn't move from fear of outcome, but from the simplicity of truth. He doesn't chase perfect answers. He acts from a grounded center that knows, I am the one shaping the path. My clarity doesn't come from the path comes from my clarity. He doesn't overanalyze to find peace. He chooses and peace follows. He trusts that even the so-called mistakes will refine him, because the one who chooses from wholeness can never truly fail. This is not recklessness, it is alignment. The decisive thinker is not concerned with being right in every detail. He is committed to being real in every moment. The emotional reactor lives in a constant state of being pulled by words, glances, situations, memories. Each one like a hook in the nervous system, yanking attention away from center. To him, emotions feel like truth. If anger rises, it must be justified. If sadness comes, it must be obeyed. If offense is taken, it must be expressed. But this identity forms when consciousness forgets its own stillness, when it mistakes movement for depth and reaction for presence. The root of this false self is a simple confusion, the belief that emotions must dictate action. In truth, emotions are energies, messengers, not masters. They are like rivers, powerful, beautiful, even necessary. But when left uncontrolled, they overflow, erode, and drown the foundation of your strength. The emotional reactor tries to find control through expression, believing that reacting strongly will reclaim power. But in reality, every ungrounded reaction is a leak, a hemorrhage of energy given away to things that do not define you. This self gets pulled into arguments, drama, sadness, or rage, not because of external events, but because there is no inner anchor. And without that anchor, every moment becomes an emotional battlefield, where the mind is a hostage and the heart is in chaos. Yet within this chaos lies the key. When the person awakens from this false identity, he realizes a deeper truth. Emotions are not enemies to fight, nor chains to obey. They are sacred signs from the heart, guiding him back to his true self. The calm force is born when you no longer move blindly at the command of feelings, but recognize them as signals, opportunities to know yourself deeper. The calm force knows clearly what it wants. Its actions do not arise from external triggers, but from an inner clarity rooted in conscious will. When an emotion arises, instead of reacting, it witnesses, what is happening in my body? What thoughts are awakening behind this feeling? Every emotional wave becomes a doorway. Each trigger becomes an invitation to explore the hidden layers of your heart and mind. The calm force listens, understands, and chooses, not from fear, not from wounded pride, but from deep self-alignment. This is not suppression, it is mastery. The one who lives as the calm force becomes like still water, reflecting all things, disturbed by none. And in this unwavering stillness, life no longer commands you. You command the way you dance with life. From this center, storms lose their power, because no storm can uproot what has already become the mountain. The victim is not truly living. He is surviving in a private doom. A silent, invisible world built from countless beliefs that power lies elsewhere. To him, life is a series of forces acting upon him. Circumstances, people, failures, authorities, all painted as reasons why he cannot change, why he must endure rather than create. This false identity forms when consciousness forgets its own throne. Instead of seeing struggles as part of his own unfolding strength, the victim sees struggles as unbeatable mountains placed by cruel hands. And so, he gives away his energy, endlessly paying attention, fear, anger, and resignation into external forces that do not nourish him. Day after day, he loses more. Not because life demands it, but because he believes he has no choice. He becomes the servant of illusions. Illusions of power outside himself. Illusions of injustice bigger than his spirit. Illusions of fate written by others' hands. Yet nothing outside truly binds him. Only the dream of his own mind does. The victim drowns in images and voices that seem bigger than him, forgetting that these pictures of power are nothing but shadows cast on the walls of his own inner temple. When consciousness awakens from this nightmare, a radical truth becomes clear. All outside appearances of power, wealth, authority, recognition, control, are lies unless rooted in your own being. Nothing and no one can write your destiny unless you first hand them your pen. The owner rises when this realization burns away the illusions. He knows power is not a thing outside to be earned. It is the light within to be remembered. The owner no longer gives destiny into the hands of opinions, systems, or conditions. He does not measure his possibilities by the limits others suggest. He does not let his heart be pulled by the voices of fear, doubt, or fake importance. Instead, he writes silently, surely from within, "My life is shaped by the power I already am." The owner does not ignore struggle. He transforms through it. He does not deny obstacles. He remembers that obstacles are still part of his own road, not chains in another's hand. And because he no longer waits for permission to create, reality itself begins to wait for his command. The attention seeker does not search for meaning, he searches for eyes. To him, being seen is being powerful. If no one is watching, he feels invisible. If he is invisible, he believes he has no value. So he crafts himself for the spotlight, not because he wants to express something true, but because he believes the gaze of others will make him real. This false self is born when consciousness falls into a deep confusion. That visibility equals importance. That to be powerful is to be recognized, and that to go unseen is to be nothing at all. Words become performances. Actions become strategies. Life becomes a constant effort to remain relevant. Not because there is something vital to offer, but because to fade from sight feels like death. The attention seeker lives in the illusion that other people's awareness is a kind of currency. He thinks, if they watch me, I have power. If they don't, I am forgotten. And to be forgotten is to be worthless. So he gives all his energy to keeping eyes on him, changing shapes, exaggerating, oversharing, performing emotions, chasing applause, all in a desperate attempt to hold on to a sense of significance. But no matter how much attention is gathered, it never lasts. It must be fed again and again. And each time it fades, so does the fragile sense of identity built upon it. Eventually a quiet exhaustion sets in, not from being unseen, but from chasing reflection after reflection and never finding the source. And then a shift occurs. When the endless hunger for attention is finally seen for what it is, a survival pattern of the false self, a deeper identity awakens, the self-source. The self-source knows that power does not come from being seen, it comes from being rooted. It knows that the gaze of others cannot give what only presence can provide. This being does not perform to matter. It does not measure its worth by reaction or applause. It is centered not because of external validation, but because it sees itself clearly, wholly, without the mirror of the world. The self-source lives like a flame, quiet, radiant, unwavering, giving light not for attention, but because light is its nature. And from that inner radiance, a new kind of magnetism is born. Not the frantic grabbing of attention, but the effortless pull of presence. The world no longer needs to see you for you to feel real, because once you return to your source, you no longer chase the gaze. You become the one who sees. The chronic worrier lives in a storm that hasn't come. 1,000 futures imagined, 1,000 disasters rehearsed. But none of them exist. This false identity forms when consciousness forgets its power in the present and begins to believe that safety lies in anticipation, in preparing for everything, controlling everything, fearing everything just in case. To the worrier, worrying feels like action. It feels like responsibility, like care, like preparation. But in truth, it is a constant spending of energy on what has not yet come, and what may never arrive. Instead of shaping life, the worrier becomes shaped by imagined danger. Every day their power is consumed before any action can begin. They overplan, overthink, hesitate again, until clarity is drowned in a sea of anxious possibility. This identity does not trust the intelligence of life, nor the stillness of inner vision. It tries to replace trust with control, and ends up losing both. But when this identity begins to crack, when exhaustion and anxiety can no longer be justified as carefulness, a deeper clarity begins to emerge. The one who awakens from this illusion becomes the visionary. The visionary is not someone who denies the future. They are someone who sees it differently. They know the future is not to be feared. It is to be shaped. Okay, so they no longer stare into the unknown with dread, because they understand that the unknown is not a threat. It is a canvas. Where the warrior contracts, the visionary expands. Where the warrior trembles, the visionary imagines. And most importantly, the visionary acts not from fear, but from focused inner seeing. They do not waste energy running from outcomes. They align with their vision and let energy move in one direction, forward. In this clarity, the mind grows calm, because it is no longer asked to do what only inner presence can, to trust, to guide, to create. The visionary doesn't hope for things to go well. They live as though life is already flowing from within them. And because they stop projecting chaos, they begin perceiving order. The complainer does not speak to change things. He speaks to survive them. His words are not plans. They are echoes of frustration that carry the weight of powerlessness. This false self is born when consciousness forgets the creative force of language. It begins to believe that voicing what's wrong will somehow release the pressure, yet the more it speaks of what's wrong, the deeper the soul sinks into the very state it wishes to escape. Complaining may feel like expression, but it is often repetition of pain. Repetition that reinforces identity, reinforces limitation, reinforces weakness. Every complaint becomes a declaration. This is my world, and I accept its helplessness. The complainer becomes addicted to vocalizing discomfort. They gather evidence, they build arguments, but they never build energy. And because words carry vibration, each sentence becomes a spell, a subtle commitment to remain entangled in what drains them. This identity leaks power in every conversation, not because others steal it, but because it is given away willingly, word by word, sigh by sigh. But when this habit is seen for what it truly is, a ritual of disempowerment, the shift begins. The one who awakens from this identity becomes the energy protector. The energy protector understands that attention is energy and speech is direction. What you speak into, you feed. What you describe often, you energize. So instead of narrating defeat, the energy protector holds silence like a shield. They do not waste breath reinforcing stories of limitation. They speak with awareness, and they speak less. This is not denial, it is discipline. The energy protector does not suppress their pain, but neither do they repeat it until it becomes their name. They observe it, learn from it, transmute it, and preserve their power. Their conversations become cleaner, their words more valuable, their silence more alive. And from that sacred economy of energy, life begins to shift, not through more expression, but through deeper presence. The distracted drifter is always in motion, yet nowhere specific. He follows noise, trends, stimulation, anything that fills the moment but leaves no lasting trace. This false identity is born when consciousness forgets its direction. Without an inner vision, the mind opens to everything and is mastered by nothing. He doesn't mean to waste time. He simply doesn't know what time is for. So the hours are filled with fragments, scrolling, talking, watching, reacting. Each one may seem small, but together they create a life that feels both full and empty. Because motion without meaning is just escape, and distraction is not harmless. It is the quiet erosion of potential. The drifter may not seem in pain, but he is restless. He is pulled into gossip, entertainment, stimulation, drama, not out of desire, but because emptiness without purpose becomes unbearable. This identity is the result of a mind that has forgotten its mission, a consciousness that has not yet remembered that focus is the doorway to power. But the moment the soul begins to feel the ache of wasted force, the moment one looks at a day, a week, a year, and wonders what was truly built, that's when something deeper begins to stir. The focused builder is born from that stirring. He does not chase energy, he channels it. He does not follow noise, he listens inward. He knows that time is not something to kill. It is the raw material of reality. The focused builder is not obsessed with productivity. He is committed to alignment. His direction is not frantic. It is grounded. He does not jump from one thing to the next hoping something will click. He builds slowly, steadily, from the inside out. He protects his attention like sacred fire, because he knows what you give attention to, you give life to. And so, he only gives it to what he is here to create, embody, and bring to the world. In this focus, a quiet joy returns. Not the thrill of distraction, but the satisfaction of direction. He is no longer scattered across 1,000 meaningless places. He is present, rooted, building a reality that reflects who he truly is. You're not broken, you're not small, you're not here to survive as fragments of who you are. You are consciousness, infinite, creative, precise. And the moment you begin to recognize the false identities you've worn, the masks shaped by fear, approval, worry, or distraction, you begin the sacred work of returning to your origin. These 8 shifts are not self-improvement, they are self-realignment, a remembering of what has always been true beneath the noise. Because at your center, you are not a pleaser, a worrier, a complainer, or a drifter. You are the commander, the visionary, the protector, the builder. You are the calm force, the decisive thinker, the self-source, the owner. You are the one who gives life its shape, not because of what you do, but because of the state of being you live from. When you repair these 8 distortions, when you reclaim the energy once lost in illusions, you stop living as a reaction to the world and begin living as the source of the world you choose. And that is the true power of consciousness. It is not controlled by conditions. It creates them. It is not bound by identity. It chooses them. This is your invitation. To live not as the echo of a world that taught you to doubt, but as the source from which your entire reality unfolds. Not in theory, but in being. Breathe into that truth. Stand inside it. And let the life you are born to shape begin from here.